Thank you. Good afternoon, students. Hello, everybody. Seeing students after a long time. How are your continuity of the classes? Very nice. Yes, good afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone. All the students which have attended the earlier sessions. Yes, I can connect to them. Very good. There is already a question by Miss Asta Sethi that if two persons, A and B, control C, then A and B are related persons. A and C are related persons, B and C are also related. Correct. They will all become related because A and B is important. That since A and B are controlling, of course, A and C and B and C will be related, but A and B also are related. Yes, they are all related persons. Very good, good questions. Value of supply is little challenging. Other chapters are easy. Okay. So value of supply is actually very short chapter. If you read it once again, then you will definitely get it because it is not a very technical topic. You apply it, take some questions on it and answer it, you will get it. You will get a hang on the subject itself. What is commercial credit note? Okay. Anyways, for the information of the students, we have a topic of input tax credit. So I am just taking up the questions which are there so that then we can start the topic for today. What is commercial credit note? See, you know there is a time limit to issue a credit note, correct? Now, if you issue the credit note within that time limit, then the benefit will be available to the supplier. That is, if you are supplying something and if you're giving a credit note, if it is given within this particular time of 6 months, then you don't have to pay GST on it, correct? Because credit note is reduction from the sale value, right? But if you issue a credit note afterwards, then you will not get the benefit under GST. But the supplier is saying, I want to give the benefit. Okay, leave GST, but the value, say I have supplied goods of 1 lakh rupees. Now I accept that I have to give him a credit note for multiple reasons for 10,000 rupees. So I want only 90,000 from him. So I will not consider GST reduction, but I will consider a value reduction of 10,000. So this value reduction of 10,000, which I will give him, that will be through a commercial credit note, which is not a GST credit note. Got it? Because I don't want to give the GST benefit because I am issuing the invoice credit note late. But for the principal value, what is the value of the goods what I have sold to him? From that, I need less value of 10,000 rupees for which I will give him a commercial credit note. Got it? That is called as commercial credit note, which will not impact your GST. It is called as a commercial credit note. Sir, if municipal taxes are paid by tenant itself to the government, then it will be added to the value of supply. Yes, as it is only supplier's liability. Correct. Because who should pay the municipal tax? The supplier landlord has to pay. Now, if the tenant has paid on behalf of the supplier, that has to get added. Priya Mishra, exemptions, there is no room for leaving out something. You have to have everything because this is a professional exam. So all the exemptions are to be included, which are not important, involves more theory. No, not possible because you never know from which aspect of exemptions questions are asked. There is no such kind of exclusion. So you have to read all the exemptions. Going concern. Okay, last question. Going concern is when a business is getting transferred as a going concern. Then there is no individual sale of assets. It is a complete business which is getting transferred. So that when it is getting transferred, that will become exempted. Soumya, in my example, 10,000 also GST will be paid, yes, because on 1 lakh, what I have sold, on that I have paid the GST. Now, the credit note which I have given, for that I will not get the reduction. So, indirectly, GST will be paid on this 10,000 also. Please upload the notes on exemptions. I think it is uploaded already, Prem Kumar. Kindly check. Exemptions I've already uploaded. Okay. So any more questions you can ask during the break so that we can start the session and then take up your questions during the break as well. Got it, Soumya. Very nice. Okay. So we are discussing today on the topic of input tax credit. Very important topic because I said in the earlier sessions that various discussions what we had everywhere input tax credit was getting involved, so we were telling that yes, input tax will be there, so you will avail input tax or you will not avail input tax. So various discussions have happened, correct? So we will discuss on input tax credit in today's session. Most of your questions also will revolve around input tax credit. If there is a question with numbers wherein you have to solve something, then definitely input tax will be involved. Unless it is purely supply related question wherein you have to determine value of supply. But generally, you get a composite question or a consolidated question where value of outward supply and value of input tax credit both has to be considered. So ITC becomes very relevant. Okay. Now, what is input tax credit? Let me hear from you before getting into my slides. You have comfortably understood the concepts of GST. Now, what is input tax credit according to you? I'm sure you can unmute yourself or you can raise your hand so that we can have a discussion instead of typing. If you could be more interactive, that will be very helpful. Credit available on the tax paid on purchases. That is Ishan's answer. So only on purchases. If I'm not purchasing and if there is some expenses, will I get credit on that? As per schedule, there's no class on 13th. In my schedule, it is there. Thanks, Priyanshi. I will check. So when the next session, we'll get a confirmation on that. No schedule. Okay, let me come back that. Okay, Divya is saying the total credit facility of input tax, supplier charges GST and recipient will get ITC if he is registered and wanted to avail. Very good. Any input, yeah, right, Ishan. If credit is available of rupees 100 and supplier liability is 120, so he will pay only 20. Correct, Rajbir. So good. credit on tax paid. You're all aware of input tax credit. That is very nice. Credit available for tax paid on inputs. It is an exempt supply. Then we don't get ITC except zero rated supply. Very nice. Very nice. Goods सेल एंड परचेज करने पर क्रेडिट मिलता है, उसको कहते हैं, उससे कैसे करें, उसे ही तो आईटीसी कहते हैं। गुड्स परचेज करने पर जो क्रेडिट मिलता है उसका यूज हम करेंगे आउटपुट टैक्स पे करने में। ठीक है। Credit availed by supplier on GST paid on purchases. Correct. So when we make outward supply, we need to pay GST to the government. Correct. Which is our liability. That amount is reduced by availing ITC, which we get on products and services we bought from, but from others for purpose of resale. Didn't understand your question, or is it an answer, Miss P? Correct. Kevin is also giving a correct answer. ITC is credit which is used to reduce the output tax. Correct. Do we get ITC on sale? No, we get ITC on purchases and expenses, because when you sell something, you have to pay GST to the government. So that is not a ITC, that is a output tax. So when you purchase or expense something, you get ITC. What kind of expenses? All expenses. Say you have bought some stationery for your office. So supplier will charge GST. So that stationery expenses, any kind of services, say you have got a AMC done for your office maintenance. So on that, whatever expenses you incur, the supplier will charge GST. So any kind of expenses where the supplier is registered, he will charge you GST. That is a credit which is available. Credit is like a wallet available on the GST portal, right? Okay. So what all you have said is correct. Now we will understand what does the relevant section say. Your understanding on input tax credit is definitely correct, and it is apt, saying that what is the input tax credit. So when you have tax on your sales, wherein you have to pay tax on the sales, on sales, what tax you pay, it is called as output GST. Okay. Whatever sales you make, except exempt sales and zero rated sales, on all other sales, you have to pay GST. Correct. Also, zero rated will include export and supplies to SEZ. So there are two kinds of sales which you make on which you don't pay GST. Is called as exempt supply. That is when you're making supplies which is exempted. So the word itself says exempted. On that exempt supply, you don't have to pay GST. Second is zero rated supply. Within this zero rated supply, you have two categories. One is export sales and one is supplies to SEZ. These two put together are called as zero rated supply. So when you do any supply to a SEZ unit or a SEZ developer, or you make exports from India to outside India, then you don't have to pay GST. On everything else, you will pay GST, right? So, and then you have to see whether there is any rate, taxable rate. When I make sale, if the rate is 0%, then I will not pay anything. So in the GST rate, you have various rates starting from 0%, then 5%, then 12%, then 18%, and then 28%. Major, these are the rates. So if the rate is 0%, on that also we will not pay the GST. Got it? So before getting into GST rate, various levels you will have to pass, whether it is outside the scope of supply, right? First, we have to see whether it is these five petroleum products or alcoholic liquor for human consumption. On these, there is no GST because it is not falling under the definition of supply. Next layer is you have to see whether it is zero rated supply, and then you have to see whether it is exempt supply, and then you have to see whether it is falling under the 0% rate. If none of this, then it will be taxable. ठीक है। तो हम आउटपुट टैक्स किसे कहते हैं? same thing what I've said in English, I'll repeat for the benefit of people who want to understand this in Hindi, कि आप जो सेल करते हो उसके ऊपर जो टैक्स लगता है उसे कहते हैं आउटपुट जीएसटी। ठीक है, जो आप सेल करते हो उसके ऊपर जो टैक्स लगता है उसे कहते हैं आप आउटपुट जीएसटी। आउटपुट जीएसटी फाइंड आउट करने के लिए आपको किस किस के ऊपर टैक्स पे करेंगे आप, एक्सपोर्ट के ऊपर नहीं पे करेंगे, एसईजेड सप्लाई को नहीं पे करेंगे, इन दोनों को मिला के हम क्या कहेंगे उसे, जीरो रेटेड सप्लाई। जीरो रेटेड सप्लाई में सप्लाईज टू एसईजेड और एक्सपोर्ट सप्लाईज दोनों को मिला के कहते हैं जीरो रेटेड सप्लाई। और एग्जेम्प्ट सप्लाई के ऊपर भी आप जीएसटी नहीं पे करेंगे। ठीक है, तो दो तरह के सेल्स के ऊपर आप जीएसटी नहीं पे करते हो, एग्जेम्प्ट सेल्स और जीरो रेटेड सेल्स। ठीक है, देन वंस यू डू टैक्स ऑन योर सेल्स, you also have paid taxes on your purchases, taxes on your expenses, and taxes on your machinery, or you can say any capital goods. Okay, so any purchases of raw materials which you do for your production or for your trading, all of that is the credit which is available to you. So tax on purchases, then tax on expenses. So any expenses which we incur, right? Any expenses which we incur for the purpose of business, on that also when GST is charged, we can claim it. And any capital assets, machineries, furnitures, equipments, whatever you purchase, all of that is also available. All of that put together is called as input GST, or also called as ITC. The full form of ITC is input tax credit. Sir, if we purchase something raw for which we are doing an exempt supply, we don't get ITC for that. Correct. So if you purchase something and on which tax is payable, but your outward supply is exempted, then you don't get ITC. That also we will see in the next slide with a diagram. Got it? So whatever purchases we do, expenses we do, on that ITC is available. On that, what is the tax payable? That is the ITC available. So from our sales, we reduce the ITC. From the sales, I will reduce the ITC, and balance is GST payable. Okay, this is clear. Sales minus GST payable. Now, what is this GST credit? We have said input tax credit. Now, what is this GST credit? GST credit means that you have made sales, or the tax payable of sales is less than your input tax credit. Okay, you have made sales, but the tax payable on that is lesser than the input tax credit. When is it possible? Various scenarios it is possible. First scenario, we'll see when you are starting up your business. You have purchased machineries. Machinery values are huge, and the supplier has charged GST. So when you buy huge machineries, you will have huge credit. Your sales will be very less. So in that scenario, you will fall under a situation of where your input is more than your sales. So that is the GST credit which is available. So when your ITC, balance of ITC which is available is your GST credit, the GST credit which is available will be in such scenario. Second scenario could be when you're purchasing at a standard price, but you're selling something at a discounted price. Why? Could be various reasons. You want to penetrate the market, you want to capture the market, so you are selling at a lower price. Or third scenario could be the rate of GST on your purchases is at a higher rate. You're doing some manufacturing activity, and once you manufacture and sell it, on that product, the GST rate is at a lower percentage. In that scenario, also, you will have a GST credit with you. Got it? GST credit will be negative figure. Yes. So basically, sales minus credit. What is positive is GST payable. What is negative is GST credit. सोमिया लोड़ा, आपको समझ में आ गया कि आप जब सेल करते हो, जब आउटपुट जीएसटी, अब जो भी आप परचेज और एक्सपेंस करते हो या मशीनरी परचेज करते हो, उसके ऊपर तो जीएसटी लगेगा, उसे कहते हैं जीएसटी इनपुट टैक्स क्रेडिट। ठीक है, तो आउटपुट टैक्स माइनस इनपुट टैक्स जो बचता है उसे कहते हैं जीएसटी पेएबल, क्योंकि आपने कलेक्ट ज्यादा किया है और आपके पास क्रेडिट कम था, तो आपको जीएसटी पे करना पड़ेगा। लेकिन अगर आपके सेल पे टैक्स पे करना कम है, या फिर आपका सेल ही नहीं है और आपका क्रेडिट्स है ज्यादा, तो फिर उसे आप जीएसटी क्रेडिट कहोगे। उसको आप किस में रखोगे? आपके जीएसटी क्रेडिट लेजर में रखोगे। उससे क्या करोगे आप? उसको आप अगले महीने यूज कर सकते हो। सो एनी क्रेडिट विच इज लाइंग कैन बी यूटिलाइज फॉर द पेमेंट ऑफ टैक्सेस इन द सब्सिक्वेंट पीरियड। ठीक है? ऐसा नहीं है कि इस महीने का क्रेडिट आपको इसी महीने में यूज करना है। अगर आपके पास क्रेडिट है पुराना, तो आप उसको यूज कर सकते हो। एंड देर इज नो बाइफर्केशन। एक बार क्रेडिट आ गया तो उसे पूरे सीजीएसटी, एसजीएसटी, आईजीएसटी में बाइफर्केट हो जाएगा। ठीक है? या प्रियांशी, जीएसटी credit based on this formula, it will be negative, right? Because your sale will be less and purchase will be more. So if it is positive, it is GST payable. If it is negative, it is GST credit. So if I have to depict it in a different picture with numbers, you can see here ki how does the credit look. Credit old can be used in the next financial year also. Yes. So once you avail the credit, once you take the credit, Kevin, you can utilize it this year, next year, or any number of years. The only time limit what we will see in section 16 is that you have to avail the credit, take the credit on time. Once you take the credit, then you can utilize it in this year, next year, or any number of years. No problem with that. Okay. X has purchased, tax paid on purchase of X. So there's a person who has purchased some goods X. On that, he has paid tax of 100 rupees. Then he's purchased some goods called Y. On Y, he's paid tax of 120 rupees. So this is credit available. This is also credit available. And the tax paid on purchase of product Z is 80 rupees. Okay. So how much is the input tax credit he has with him on purchase of these three products? 300. Correct. When you're adding all of this, that is the credit which is available to you. Now, this credit, what you can do, you can utilize for payment of your output tax. Now, on the mixture of these three products, you got credit of 300 rupees. Now you're selling a product on which you have done some process. So that's way, and your value is increased. So your tax payable on this is 450 rupees. So the tax to be paid by the manufacturer, he is a manufacturer. Now, how much tax he will pay to the government? Output tax, which is 450 rupees, less input tax, which is 100, 120, and 80. When you add all of this, which is 300, 450 minus 300 is 150 rupees. This is what is your GST payable. So your GST is credit on rupees 300, and which is shown in ledger. It will be shown in the electronic credit ledger, but it will immediately get offset because you have output tax which is payable. So 150, 300 is your credit, but it will get washed away immediately when you file your return, because on filing of your returns, you have to offset your output with input tax credit. So from your 450 rupees, 300 you will utilize, balance 150 you will pay from your bank account. Correct. Rupees 150 is GST payable. क्लियर है यहां तक कि आपका जो भी इनपुट है, आप उसको आउटपुट से रिड्यूस करके जो भी बैलेंस पे करना है वो पे करोगे। ठीक है? और यहाँ पे अगर इनपुट क्रेडिट 500 हो जाएगा, ठीक है, हमने यहाँ पे देखा 100, 120, 80 है, तो ये हो गया 300। अभी अगर एक्स की जगह 100 की जगह 300 हो जाएगा, तो फिर आपका क्रेडिट कितना होगा? 50, 500। करेक्ट। तो आपका credit will be 500 and your output tax will become 450. So 300 minus 500 minus 450 makes it कितना? 450 minus 500, because your output is 450 and your input is 500, which is negative balance of 50 rupees. मतलब what I said in the previous slide, अगर output minus input करने पे negative value आता है, ओके, आउटपुट माइनस इनपुट करने पे अगर नेगेटिव वैल्यू आता है तो इट मींस इट इज अ इनपुट क्रेडिट बैलेंस, input credit ledger balance of rupees 50, and 50 can be credit, it can be utilized for the any output tax payable for the next month. Correct. So no output tax liability in this case. Correct. In case of that 500 rupees, yes, there will not be any output tax liability. In the ECL, in the electronic credit ledger. So whatever is this 50 rupees extra in the second example, that will go and sit in the electronic credit ledger. Got it? So output minus input can be outward payable or it could be input tax credit. Okay. To get into the input tax credit under GST, like how we had understood pre-GST what were there. Here also, if we understand, before GST, the credit was available with different names. It was called as SENVAT and VAT. What is SENVAT? SENVAT means Central Value Added Tax. So what was the central taxes which were levied that point of time before GST came in? Excise duty and service tax. So when excise duty and service tax were combinedly claimed as a credit, that was called as SENVAT credit. And whatever purchases you make within the state, on that the supplier will charge the state VAT, because on a intrastate transaction he will charge VAT, and on excise and manufacturing of some goods and provision of services they used to charge excise duty or service tax. So that combined together was called as SENVAT. However, under the SENVAT and VAT regime, that is before the GST, the policy was there was no fungibility between SENVAT and VAT. That is, whatever purchases you made on which you have paid the taxes, you cannot claim that you have to pay double taxation, because when you used to sell, you have to pay VAT, and when you used to manufacture, you will pay the SENVAT. Okay. Now take an example of a toothpaste. A toothpaste is getting manufactured and you are in pre-GST regime. Okay. What all taxes will be levied on that? Manufacturing of toothpaste, excise duty, correct? Because he is manufacturing. So the manufacturer of toothpaste will charge excise duty. What else will he charge? Only excise duty. Service tax. No. Yes, Harshdeep and Miss Priya Mishra have given the correct answer. Apart from excise duty, he will also charge VAT. Because manufacture करके करेगा क्या वो? After manufacture, he will sell it. Correct? तो इसीलिए on manufacture and on the aspect of sale of that goods, VAT will be charged. So this example of our manufacturer of toothpaste, he is saying that before GST, what taxes I used to pay? I used to pay excise duty and I used to pay VAT also. So this excise duty, what he used to pay was called as SENVAT. Now, if this toothpaste is used by another manufacturer, for his office purposes, right? Then it would have been a case where he will charge excise duty and the buyer can claim the credit. Now he is selling it, manufacturer and selling it. So there is an aspect of manufacturer as well as there is an aspect of sale, right? Manufacturing and sale both are happening in the same leg. So they will charge excise duty and VAT. Now this excise duty was called as SENVAT credit. It can be claimed only by another manufacturer and VAT can be claimed by anybody else. So if I am giving it to a distributor, he will not claim credit of his excise duty. That will become cost for him. And the VAT, what I'm charging for selling this goods within the state, then in that case, he can claim the credit of that SENVAT. He can claim the credit of VAT paid on purchase of goods. So central excise and VAT, two levies were levied, and these were not fungible. That is, utilization cannot be made of SENVAT against the VAT payable. Got it? The utilization cannot be made of the SENVAT against the VAT payable. You can utilize the VAT credit only with the VAT payable. Okay. So that is the first point wherein we are saying that there is no fungibility between SENVAT and VAT. Second is CST was levied on interstate transaction without credit. This was very important. Now, when you do any transaction within the state, you will charge VAT. For a transaction from one state to another state, what will you charge? Manufacturing and selling from one state to another state. SENVAT and yes, P is given correct answer. You will charge excise duty and you will also charge another tax which is IGST तो अभी है रोहित मैं जीएसटी के पहले की बात कर रहा हूँ सेनवैट क्या होता है सेनवैट होता है जो आप मैन्युफैक्चरर से खरीदते हो जो मैन्युफैक्चरर आपको चार्ज करेगा उसे कहते हैं सेनवैट और सर्विस टैक्स जो भी चार्ज करता है उसे भी कहते हैं सेनवैट सेनवैट के अंदर मैन्युफैक्चरर का एक्साइज ड्यूटी मैन्युफैक्चरर का सभी ड्यूटी सेनवैट में और सर्विस टैक्स भी इंक्लूड होके दोनों को मिला के कहते थे सेनवैट क्लियर ठीक है सो प्रॉब्लम वाज सीएसटी जो है was levied on interstate transaction आप मैन्युफैक्चरर हो आप टूथपेस्ट मैन्युफैक्चरर करते आउटसाइड द स्टेट बेच रहे हो तो फिर यू विल चार्ज एक्साइज ड्यूटी उसका सेनवैट क्रेडिट कहेंगे और यू विल चार्ज सीएसटी सीएसटी का क्रेडिट किसी को नहीं मिलता था सिर्फ वैट का क्रेडिट मिलता है सेनवैट सीएसटी में प्रोविजन नहीं है सीएसटी का मतलब है सेंट्रल सेल्स टैक्स ये सेंट्रल सेल्स टैक्स का क्रेडिट किसी को नहीं मिलता था ठीक है अंडर जीएसटी सीमलेस क्रेडिट ऑन गुड्स एंड सर्विसेज इज देयर वहां पे की क्रेडिट नहीं मिलेगा ऐसे बहुत सारे प्रॉब्लम्स थे इसीलिए जीएसटी आया है और बोल रहा है कि आपको सीमलेस क्रेडिट मिलेगा यू विल गेट सीमलेस क्रेडिट ऑन गुड्स एंड सर्विसेज एक्सेप्शन इज सप्लायर्स charged to tax under composition scheme and which is liable to exempted goods and services तो अनलेस आप एग्जेम्प्टेड गुड्स बेच रहे हो तो फिर आपको क्रेडिट नहीं मिलेगा और कॉम्पोजिशन स्कीम कर रहे हो तो फिर आपको क्रेडिट नहीं मिलेगा सो अंडर जीएसटी देर इज अ सीमलेस फ्लो ऑफ क्रेडिट अंटिल इट रीचेस टू अ कॉम्पोजिशन स्कीम पर्सन और अ एग्जेम्प्टेड पर्सन ठीक है क्लियर विद दिस If CENVAT, central value added tax levied on value addition of the goods or services by the central government, yes, it was on manufacturing. What was levied by the central government was called as excise duty. That excise duty and service tax put together is CENVAT Omkar. ओके। अंडर जीएसटी क्या हो गया कि आपको अलग अलग चार्ज नहीं लगता है, आपको सिर्फ सीजीएसटी एसजीएसटी लगता है या फिर आईजीएसटी। सो दैट नॉन फंजिबिलिटी या क्रेडिट नहीं मिलना वो प्रॉब्लम नहीं है। तो अंडर जीएसटी seamless credit is available on goods and services. Exception is supplies which are taxed under composition scheme. मतलब composition tax payer जो है वो क्रेडिट नहीं ले सकता है और ना तो वो जीएसटी चार्ज कर सकता है। एंड सेकेंड लिंक इज इन केस ऑफ सप्लाई ऑफ exempted goods or services. If a person is supplying exempted goods, तो फिर he is not charging GST, but there will be somebody who will charge GST to him, right? So when somebody charge GST to him, that GST he cannot claim the credit. So on supply of exempted goods, the credit chain blocks and it doesn't pass on further. So for interstate transactions, CST and excise duty was levied, yes, pre-GST, that is prior to GST coming in from 1st of July 2017, that is when GST has come in, तब से GST is getting charged for any interstate transactions. CST and excise was levied. Composition schemes क्या होता है sir? We have discussed Nidhi, composition scheme, right? कि that is a scheme wherein instead of paying tax at a higher rate, your turnover will be restricted up to that turnover, whatever supplies or purchases you're making. On that, you will not get the credit, but you have to pay a lower rate of GST on your outward supply. Got it? Now, ITC, what are the features of ITC? It avoids cascading of effect. That's what we have seen. कि पहले एक्साइज ड्यूटी में कैस्केडिंग होता था, बट इन जीएसटी that avoids the cascading effect. Second is it is a destination based tax. Since GST is a destination based tax, the input tax credit also will flow through the destiny. So when I am bought something, so the credit is with me. As soon as I sell it, the credit will go to the buyer. So wherever the goods move, there, those places, ITC is also moving. Okay. So ITC will move along with the goods when you are supplying something and it is reaching the customer, the credit also will go to him because supplies is being made from your end to the buyer. So the buyer, where he is there he should get the credit. So input tax credit also goes based on the destination. Then ITC credit is available on what? We know in the first slide we have seen. ITC credit is available on inputs, services, and capital goods. Okay. ITC will be available on inputs, services, and capital goods. Then less from the input tax which is available, there is a provision in the act which says that block credits will not be available for credit. Okay. So section, there's no section as such. Yes, there is a section which deals with block credit. Section 17, when we go after 16, we'll see it that block credits, even if it is used for business, that will be blocked. सर मैंने कार खरीदा है मेरे ऑफिस के ओनर के लिए, जो सिर्फ ऑफिस काम पे ही यूज करते हैं, घर पे उनकी दूसरी कार है, ही इज यूजिंग दिस कार ओनली फॉर ट्रैवलिंग फ्रॉम वर्क टू ऑफिस, ऑफिस टू वर्क, एंड अंडर द ब्लॉक क्रेडिट इट इज अ कैटेगरी सेइंग कार्स के ऊपर आपको क्रेडिट नहीं मिलेगा. सो डू यू थिंक ऑन अ परचेज ऑफ अ कार विल यू गेट द क्रेडिट? No, sir. Yes, that's the right answer. That whatever for business use also, if you use a car, or non-business use also, on the purchase of car, you don't get the credit because the block credit provision says that whenever you are ITC, so on these credits, even though if it is used for business, genuine purchases, still this credits will be blocked. Okay, next is ITC is used for payment of tax. Like how we have seen in the example, and few have given your own example that ITC will be used for payment of tax. Input is for purchase of goods or services, and output is for sale. Correct. Input can be for purchase of goods and for services, and output of the sale of the same. Correct. So ITC is used for payment of tax. Fine. Then ITC is not available when tax is not payable. That is, when you are making any exempt supply, then you will not get the credit. Exception is, as we know, zero rated supply. On zero rated supply, there is no tax payable, but on ITC, okay, ITC not available when tax is not payable. When tax is not payable, ITC is not available. But when it is a zero rated supply, then ITC will be available. This we are clear. वन टू वन कोरिलेशन इज नॉट रिक्वायर्ड. वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट कि आपने परचेज किया है एक सोप को. ओके, यू हैव परचेज्ड अ सोप on which you have paid the credit. You have paid the tax, it becomes your input tax credit. Now, this soap is not sold in this month. A toothpaste which was purchased last month is being sold now. Okay, you have bought soap, but you are selling toothpaste. Will you get credit of the soap taxes on the soap what you have purchased, or you will not get? What when Asta? Soumya is saying you will get the credit. निधि मैं बोल रहा हूं आपने एक सोप खरीदा है, ठीक है, उसके ऊपर आपको आईटीसी ले लिया है, और इस महीने आप टूथपेस्ट बेच रहे हो. क्या सोप परचेज करने का क्रेडिट आप टूथपेस्ट बेचने में यू ऑफसेट कर सकते हो? We can get it since credit, since it is not to be specified which credit is when it is got going to the electronic credit ledger. Correct. Super. Yes. So everybody is in tandem because we have seen this slide, and most of them are otherwise also aware that one-to-one correlation is not required. So the purchase of soap can be utilized as a credit for selling of toothpaste. So it all वन की मैंने टूथपेस्ट परचेज किया तब मैं टूथपेस्ट सेल करूंगा तभी क्रेडिट मिलेगा, ऐसी जरूरी नहीं है. सो वट एवर परचेजेस यू हैव डन, इट विल बी लाइक अ बंडल थिंग, एंड दैट बंडल you can use it for any outward payment. Okay. Next is IGST is the core for interstate. So whenever you do any interstate transaction, you have credits of CGST and SGST, but you will charge IGST when you're making any interstate sale. So that interstate sale when you make IGST is the core, right? And when you have both taxable and exempt supply. So we know that when you're making 100% exempt supply, ITC will not be available. But what happens when you make both taxable and exempted? You will claim proportionate credit. If you have both taxable and exempt share, then you will claim proportionate credit. Then common inputs, which is proportionate ITC attributable to taxable supply will be available. That is in this scenario, when you have both taxable and exempt supply, and for common inputs, those inputs which you are using commonly for taxable and exempt supply, you can claim proportionate input tax credit. If we purchase something which is not related to our business, like we are a manufacturer and getting ITC from company's new branch building construction. Firstly, on building construction, credit is blocked. Okay. So if you are having some new plant construction, for building construction, you will not get. If you have a new plant construction, then can you claim the credit? Yes. Even if it is not related to the product, if it is used for the business, you can still claim the credit. Except block credit, everything else you can claim it. Which are block credit? How do we identify? We will identify it, Dhanush, in the next class when we discuss section 17. In section 17, they have given a list. Based on that list, we'll get to know whether it is credit available or not available. If it is not available, it is clearly given under the block credit list. Here with the concepts of ITC. So, okay. We were discussing on the aspect of what happens when you are using a input for both business purposes and non-business purposes. First, you have to determine whether you're using it for business purposes. Yes, then credit is available. If you are using it not for business purposes, you are not using for business purposes, then credit is not available. But if one input is commonly used for business and non-business, okay, like there is a proprietor, he has a house. In part of the house, in half of the house, there is a wall and he is using it for his office purposes and half is using for his personal purposes. And he's paying rent, commercial rent. Supplier is the landlord is charging him GST. So it is a commonplace and GST will be charged on everything on 50%, which is used for business, and 50% which is not used for business. He has to bifurcate on the basis of ratio of turnover attributable to common credit. He will break up the credit. So a credit which is there commonly used for business and non-business purposes on the basis of ratio of the turnover attributable to common credit, he will bifurcate. So in this case of our proprietor who is using it for business and non-business purposes, based on place, we can identify. But extrapolate this example to a business. In a business, I have both credit for business and non-business purposes. So if there is any business and non-business, both transactions which are happening, what is non-business turnover? What is business turnover? I'll get the ratio on that. Only on business turnover, I will claim the credit. I'll explain this with the example now, and we'll understand this slide. Then I'll start with the example. And if any credit is used for taxable supplies, yes, you will claim the full credit. If it is not used for taxable supply, you will not get the credit. And commonly, which is used for taxable and exempt supply, there you will claim the credit on the basis of turnover attributable to common credit. GST cannot be charged on residential accommodation for proprietary, it is exempt. Correct. But if it is purely used, Asa, but if it is a common place, then he will have to charge because it's a commercial place which is used. So you cannot bifurcate that supplier. For the supplier, it's a commercial supply. So there you will have to claim the proportionate credit. If you are unregistered and buying taxable supplies, then also we get ITC? No. If you are unregistered, then you don't get the credit. Only if you are registered, then you get the credit. Business purpose means you are registered. If unregistered and used for taxable supplies, no. If you are unregistered and if you are using for taxable supply, still credit will not be available because you are not registered. Okay. Now, uh, used for taxable supplies and non-taxable supplies. So what is happening? You have paid rent. You are a person who is having a office and you are having rental. On rental, you have credit of 10,000 rupees. Okay. And you have certain, say, audit services on which you have credit of 5,000 rupees. Okay. And you have some common expenses, or let's give me a word for it. You have maintenance expense for this office, which is 2,000 rupees. So all of this is the tax value. Okay. Not the value of supply. These are the tax on the supply what is being made. Now, this is the credit which is available to you. Okay. You have two types of supplies. You have professional services, which you are providing a, let me make it clear here. This is nature of expense and this is tax, which is basically your ITC. This is your input tax credit you have, supplies, and this is value of supply. I'm not talking about the tax. So professional fees, you have 2,50,000 rupees. And you have educational services. Okay. Educational services to the extent of 1,50,000 rupees. Now you tell me how much of the credit you can claim. From this place itself, you are running the rental, you're getting the service of an auditor, and you are incurring maintenance. So how much of this credit will be available to you? Means if the supplier, it is supply of residential accommodation. If it is recipient used for commercial purpose, then it will be exempted. No, if the supplier is supplying residential accommodation, if the recipient uses for commercial, then it will be taxable. 5/8 of ITC. One person is saying 7,000, one person is saying 5/8. How can it be 5/8? I didn't understand. What is your total ITC? Total ITC is 10 plus 5 plus 2, 17,000. Correct? Okay. Correct. Proportionate. So professional services is taxable. Educational services is exempted. So professional services is taxable. How much credit I can claim on 17,000? 17,000 into 2,50,000 divided by 250 plus 150 makes it 4 lakh rupees. So it is 17,000 into 25 divided by 40. 10,625. Correct. So 10,625 out of 17,000, you can claim credit of 10,625. Okay. So out of the total credit of 17,000, you cannot claim the full credit. You can claim only credit to the extent of proportionate, which is you can claim 2.5 times of the 4 times, which is 2,50,000 divided by your total turnover gives you 10,625. 4 lakhs कैसे आया? 2,50,000 plus 1,50,000 is your total turnover. So proportionate का मतलब क्या होता है? What is your taxable turnover divided by your total turnover? ठीक है? Balance will be available? No, balance will get lapsed. आपको balance मिलेगा ही नहीं. You will have to reverse the credit. So out of 17,000 credit, 10,625 आप ले लोगे, and balance is called as reversal of credit, which means you cannot claim this credit at all. कितना है 17,000 minus 10,625? 6,375. Right. Reversal means there'll be GST credit? No. Having credit is having credit. Reversing, not taking the credit is called as reversal. Correct. Out of 17,000, we have used 10,625 to pay the GST on outward supply. रिवर्सल ऑफ क्रेडिट का यूज नहीं लिया था जा सकता है. रिवर्सल का मतलब ही है कि आपको उसका बेनिफिट नहीं लेना है, इसीलिए कहते हैं उसे रिवर्स करना है. इफ यू टेक इट बाय मिस्टेक तो फिर आपको रिवर्स करना पड़ेगा विथ इंटरेस्ट. कैन वी यूज बैलेंस आईटीसी? नहीं, वी कैन नॉट यूज इट. In case of voluntary GST register can avail, yes. whether you are voluntary registered or compulsory registered. Once you're registered, you can claim the ITC. Yes, you cannot use it. That's why you're reversing. You're right, Priya, that you should not use. Because you have making exempt supplies also, right? Educational services exempted. So a credit is available to you with a promise that you will utilize it and pay taxes to the government. But if you're making any supplies no on which there is nothing like which you are available, right? On that credit is not available. जैसे यहाँ पे इंटू मार्क डाला है वैसे आपको क्रेडिट नहीं है तो फिर यू शुड नॉट यूटिलाइज इट, यू शुड रिवर्स इट. यस मैडम.
Good evening, sir.
या गुड इवनिंग.
So, the reversal of credit, like for 6,375, we can use it for some other output supply, which is tax, like on which we have to pay GST.
You cannot. So once you have any credit which is to be reversed, the intention of reversing itself is that you should not utilize it, neither this month or in subsequent month or for something else. So the reversal,
The
once it is
expense.
done, it is gone. You should not claim the credit again.
So for the expenses which we have done for the respective outward supplies, like in those outward supplies which all are exempted, we won't get ITC, and for the rest of the services we have to pay, otherwise the remaining balance will go in the reversal.
Correct. Correct.
Okay.
Is there any time limit to reverse the balance credit? Yes, there is a time limit within the month. So when you file your return, at that point of time, you have to reverse the credit. Only negative credit will be transferred to the next month. Yes. So if you have more credit than your output tax, then that will get transferred to the next month. Reversal will not get transferred. ठीक है, क्लियर है यहां तक? Now some important definitions which becomes relevant. Well, a negative on balance credit might be for some other expense also. The balance credit, correct, that's fine. But as long as you have credit balance, you can utilize for the next month. If you do not have balance, you cannot claim it. If ITC comes more than 17,000, then it can be used for other items. Anything, we don't have the data of output tax. 17,000 is the number what I've given Priyanshi. If you have, say, 25,000 of credit also, still कितना आपका आउटपुट है उतना देखना पड़ेगा. Proportionate will be the criteria. Proportionate you can claim, not just outside the proportion, that is outside the taxable net, that has to be reversed. Okay. The important definition is what is capital goods, because we know that credit can be claimed on input services and capital goods. So what is capital goods? Capital goods means the goods, the value of which is capitalized in the books of accounts and which is used or intended to be used in the course or furtherance of business. That is capital goods, which is capitalized. Whatever you capitalized means आप जो fixed assets में रखोगे उसे कहते हैं capitalized, which you are not expensing it off. आप P&L account में नहीं डालोगे, you will put it in your show it in your fixed assets, that is called as capitalized. So the those goods, the value of which will be capitalized in the books of accounts and which is used or intended to be used in the course of furtherance of business is capital goods. Fine, because you will not use it today, you'll use it over a period of time, but still you will get the credit of it today because you are using it or intending it to use it for the course or furtherance of business. Fine. Then exempt supply. Exempt supply means any supply of any goods which attracts nil rate of tax or which may be wholly exempt, or it includes non-taxable supply also. Input means any goods other than capital goods which is used or intended to be used by a supplier in the course of furtherance of business. And input services means any service which is used or intended to be used by a supplier in the course or furtherance of business. So there is a distinction between inputs and input services. Inputs का मतलब हो गया goods and input services will be services which you are using it. Okay, capital goods, we are clear. Now, inputs means any raw materials what you're purchasing, they are called inputs, and any services which you procure is input services. The next important definition is input tax. What is the input tax on which we claim the credit? Input tax in relation to a registered person. Okay. Input tax in relation to a registered person means the central tax, state tax, integrated tax, or the union territory tax, which is charged on any supply of goods or services, which is made to him, and it includes IGST charged on import of goods. So, what all input tax you can claim? You can claim input tax on IGST, which is paid on import, the tax payable under 9(3) or 9(4), which is reverse charge mechanism, and the tax payable under 5(3) or 4(4), that is also reverse charge mechanism, tax payable under 9(3) or 9(4) of the respective state tax. So CGST, SGST tax, whatever you are paying, all of that will be considered as a input tax. So input tax again in relation to a registered person means a central tax, state tax, integrated tax, or union territory tax. So anybody who's charging you CGST, SGST, or IGST, all of that is a credit which is available. And IGST, when you pay on import, and reverse charge, what you pay, that is also claimable. So reverse charge is not an expense. It is also a credit. When you pay reverse charge, you can claim the credit back. And it does not include the tax paid under the composite supply, because under composite supply he cannot claim the credit and he cannot charge GST also. That's why composite levy is outside. Other than that, all GST which is charged is a credit for you. Next, we know this taxable supply and zero rated supply. Correct? Taxable supply means a supply on which goods or services are both, which is leviable to tax, and zero rated supply is export and SEZ supplies. Clear? So, with the heavy definition, we'll go to section 16. But before that, we need a break. We'll take break of 10 minutes and catch at 4:50. Right. So the yes, sir. Fine. So we were discussing on important definitions. Now we'll go to section. Just one moment. You can make Mr. Ajit Kumar as the co-host, sir. Okay. So what is the ITC whole chapter? It is divided into these six sections. Okay. The relevant ones are only four. Section 16 says about the eligibility and conditions for claiming the credit, which is section 16. Then section 17 says what we have discussed now, the apportionment of credit and block credit is given in under section 17. Then availability of credit in special circumstances is discussed in section 18. And then taking input tax credit in respects of inputs and capital goods, which is sent for the job work, is covered under section 19. And there is something called as a input service distributor that is dealt in section 20, and manner of recovery of credit, which is distributed in excess, is covered under section 21. So the relevant for us in the inter level is only section 16, 17, and 18. So only these three sections are relevant. The balance three sections are part of the input tax credit chapter, but I mean the chapter of the law, not in your chapter. It is there under the law. In even under the law, under the GST law, we have chapters. Within chapters, we have sections. So all of this is falling under the chapter of input tax credit, but we don't have to deal with all of it. We have to deal with only section 16, 17, and 18. So we'll deal with section 16 today. Section 16 says that who is eligible for taking credit, which is ITC, is two conditions. A person should be registered under GST and the goods or services should be used in the course of business. So you should take registration under GST and the goods or services should be used in the course of business. Then you are eligible for taking the credit. Okay, so you should be registered. First criteria that we all know, that without registration, like a lot of questions had come in here asking that if a person is unregistered and still if he's using for the business, can he claim the credit? No, he cannot claim the credit. So the criteria is that you should be registered under GST, only then you can claim the credit, and the goods or services should be used in the course of business. Then you are eligible to take the credit. Now, such ITC, where will it go? It will get credited in the electronic credit ledger. Okay. So once you satisfy these two conditions, you are eligible to take the credit and the credit will flow into the electronic credit ledger. Then the conditions for taking ITC. 16.1 says that, okay, I will give you the credit. Now 16.2 says there are certain conditions. What are these conditions? There are 3 plus 3, totally 6 conditions which are to be considered for claiming the credit. Okay, first is you should be in possession of a tax paying document. To claim the credit, all the 6 conditions are relevant. All the 6 conditions has to be satisfied. You should be in possession of a tax paying document. That's the first condition. Second is the invoices which is uploaded and appearing in your GSTR 2B. Only that you can claim the credit. The supplier has given you a tax paying document, but that is not appearing in your GSTR 2B. You cannot claim the credit. So the invoice should be uploaded and should appear in your GSTR 2B. Third condition, the recipient of the goods or services, you should file the you should actually receive the goods. Third condition is receipt of the goods or services. It is not that I've given you an invoice, but you have not received the goods, you can claim the credit. No, you should actually receive the goods also. Fourth condition, ITC should not be restricted. The input tax credit should not be restricted, which means we have discussed that restriction is there under section 17. So it should not be those credits. If it is those credits, then you will not get the input tax credit. Fifth condition, tax levied on supply is actually paid to the government. You have got an invoice, you have received the goods in your 2B, it is not restricted, but the supplier has not paid tax to the government. So with how will you get the credit? If he pays the tax to the government, then the government will give credit to you. So fifth condition is that the tax which is levied on the supply should be actually paid to the government. And final condition is, how will you claim the credit? You can claim ITC by filing GSTR 3B. If you have not filed the 3B, you have satisfied all other conditions, credit will come to you. How will it come? There is no mechanism. The mechanism is you should file your returns, only then you can claim the credit. So claim ITC by filing your GSTR 3B. Okay, so these are the 6 conditions through which you can claim the credit. This is what is there in section 16.2. तो 16.2 क्या बोलता है कि 6 कंडीशन फुलफिल करना है तब आपको क्रेडिट मिलेगा. फर्स्ट, आप फर्स्ट कंडीशन यहाँ पे की पोजीशन ऑफ टैक्स पेइंग डॉक्यूमेंट, आपके पास टैक्स पेइंग डॉक्यूमेंट रहना चाहिए. क्या है वो हम देखेंगे दूसरे स्लाइड्स में इन डिटेल. हर एक चीज का एक स्पेशल एक्सप्लेनेशन हम देखेंगे. दैट आपको टैक्स पेइंग डॉक्यूमेंट रहना चाहिए. सेकेंड, आपका जो सप्लायर है वो GSTR 1 फाइल करेगा, तब आपका जो हाथ में इनवॉइस है उसका डिटेल्स आपको GSTR 2B में दिखना चाहिए. कैसे? सप्लायर GSTR 1 फाइल करता है तब आपके GSTR 2B में अपीयर होता है. अगर वो फाइल नहीं करेगा तो आपके 2B में नहीं दिखेगा. थर्ड कंडीशन, जो भी इनवॉइस है उसमें जो भी गुड्स बताए गए हैं वो आपको रिसीव होने चाहिए. ठीक है, अगर आपने रिसीव नहीं किया है तो आप क्रेडिट नहीं ले सकते हो. फोर्थ कंडीशन, आईटीसी शुड नॉट बी रेस्ट्रिक्शन. आईटीसी रेस्ट्रिक्टेड नहीं होना चाहिए. रेस्ट्रिक्शन कहाँ पे है? सेक्शन 17 में हमने कहा है कि ब्लॉक क्रेडिट्स है, उसमें रेस्ट्रिक्शन नहीं होना चाहिए. फिफ्थ कंडीशन, टैक्स लेवीड ऑन सप्लाई इज एक्चुअली पेड टू द गवर्नमेंट. जो टैक्स है वो गवर्नमेंट को पे होना चाहिए. ठीक है, सप्लायर ने इनवॉइस दे दिया लेकिन गवर्नमेंट को टैक्स नहीं दिया, आपको क्रेडिट नहीं मिलेगा. और सिक्स कंडीशन है, आपने सभी कंडीशन तो सेटिस्फाई किए लेकिन आपके खुद के रिटर्न्स आपने फाइल नहीं किए, क्योंकि आप जब आपके GSTR 3B रिटर्न्स फाइल करोगे तभी आपको क्रेडिट मिलेगा. ठीक है, तो ये 6 कंडीशंस है. क्लियर विद दीज 6 कंडीशंस, बिकॉज दीज आर द 6 कंडीशंस व्हिच आर रेलेवेंट, एंड ऑन satisfying of all the 6 conditions only you can claim the credit. Any doubts here? Clear. ठीक है. So we'll delve into each of this because each of this also there is some intricacies. First is you should be in possession of a tax paying document, which is 16.2A, which says that what is a tax paying document? It could be a invoice or revised invoice which is issued by the supplier of goods or services. So the invoice or revised invoice which is issued by the supplier of goods or services is one of the tax paying document. So when I supply goods to you, I will raise an invoice, and if I have registered freshly, जब हम registration जाएंगे तब we will understand when you are registering. Before registration, whatever supply you make, and you are applied for registration, you didn't get the registration certificate. For that duration, you get a 30 days time limit to revise your invoice. Only in such cases, revised invoice is possible. In your normal circumstances, you cannot issue a revised invoice. ऐसा नहीं कि मैंने कुछ गलती किया कि आई हैव टू रेज अ इनवॉइस, नॉट पॉसिबल. इफ यू हैव मेड अ मिस्टेक, यू कैन नॉट इश्यू अ रिवाइज्ड इनवॉइस. देन व्हाट विल यू इश्यू? करेक्ट. अगर हम से कंडीशन फॉलो नहीं करेंगे तो हमें आईटीसी नहीं मिलेगा. 16 two conditions for claiming ITC by the recipient. Yes, it is by the recipient. Okay. So what will happen if the supplier has made a mistake in the invoice and I am saying that he cannot revise? तो फिर क्या होगा? Correct, Mohammed, that he will issue a credit note. If there is any downward revision, he will issue a credit note. Full answer देना चाहिए आपको. Because if it is a downward revision, then he will issue a credit note. If it's a upward revision, then he will issue a debit note. ठीक है? Clear? Second is invoice issued by the recipient who is receiving goods or services from unregistered supplier along with the proof of payment of tax. When will this happen? This will happen in case of reverse charge mechanism. When I have to pay tax under reverse charge mechanism, then I will pay the tax and I have to issue invoice on myself. GST में ऐसा concept है. Before GST, there was no concept like this. It was only the supplier who used to raise an invoice. But in case of this reverse charge mechanism, the recipient will have to raise self invoice on him and he has to have a proof of payment, then he can claim the credit. So, normal situation, supplier will issue. In reverse charge mechanism, reverse recipient will issue. And debit note, any upward revision, debit note. And bill of entry, because when we import something, we know that apart from customs duty, we pay IGST. So for that IGST credit, a bill of entry is a valid document and document issued by a input service distributor. Who is an input service distributor? A person who is having a registration in one place as an input service distributor and distributes the credit to his other branches. He is called as a input service distributor. Okay. Upward and downward revision of what? Of taxes and value. So you have issued an invoice of 1 lakh rupees. You had to raise an invoice actually for 90,000 rupees. So will you revise the invoice? You cannot revise the invoice. 1 lakh already issue ho chuka hai. For the 10,000, you will raise a credit. Got it? What is bill of entry? When you import, right? When you import, the customs gives the clearance through a document which is called as bill of entry. So in that bill of entry, your goods description, the value, the taxes, the customs duty, and the IGST will be mentioned. That is called as bill of entry document. Got it? So these are the documents for satisfying the first condition. If any one of these document is there, on this basis, we can claim the credit. There was one question. धनुष, you got about credit note and debit note. इनपुट सर्विस डिस्ट्रीब्यूटर क्या होता है? मैडम आपके सिलेबस में नहीं है, फिर भी आप मैं बता देता हूं कि हर्ड कि जब इनपुट आपके पास मल्टीपल ब्रांचेस है, ठीक है, और आपको एक ही जगह पे इनवॉइस आ रहे हैं, ठीक है, क्योंकि आपकी सेंट्रलाइज्ड बेसिस है, लेकिन आपको तो क्रेडिट दूसरे स्टेट में करना है क्योंकि उस स्टेट ने यूज किया है। तो ये इनपुट डिस्ट्रीब्यूटर है, वो क्या कहता है कि जो भी क्रेडिट है वो एक ही जगह लेगा और उस रेस्पेक्टिव ब्रांच में डिस्ट्रीब्यूट करेगा, उसे कहते हैं इनपुट सर्विस डिस्ट्रीब्यूटर। क्लियर? मिनिमम रिक्वायरमेंट्स कि आपका इनवॉइस में टोटल ये फॉर्मेट होना चाहिए, इट्स दिस इज ओनली वन ऑफ द फॉर्मेट, बट जो जो डिस्क्रिप्शन है वो रहना चाहिए, दैट सप्लायर्स नेम, जीएसटीएन नंबर, रिसीवर्स नेम, डिस्क्रिप्शन ऑफ गुड्स, एचएसएन रेट, आईजीएसटी, सीजीएसटी, एसजीएसटी, व्हाट इज द रेस्पेक्टिव रेट्स एंड थिंग्स। बट अगर सब कुछ नहीं है तो इन द लॉ सेज दैट अगर आपके पास सब कुछ नहीं है, at least minimum requirements should be there. What is this minimum requirements? GSTIN of the supplier and the recipient, description of the goods, total value of the supply of goods, amount of the tax charged, and place of supply in case it is a interstate. So इतना minimum requirements भी काफी है. Second condition is details of invoice, means goods and input is being distributed by input service distributor, only services, input service distributor. तो ISD सिर्फ सर्विसेज डिस्ट्रीब्यूट करता है, गुड्स को डिस्ट्रीब्यूट नहीं करता है. दिस इज द इनवॉइस बाय द सप्लायर और द रिसिपिएंट. दिस इज द invoice for the supplier. For the recipient also description will be same. In case of the supplier it will be is his own name. That's the only difference. Details of invoices or debit notes uploaded by the supplier in GSTR1. Second condition is the supplier should upload the invoices in the GSTR1 or IFF. What is IFF? जो भी क्वार्टरली रिटर्न्स फाइल करते हैं, ठीक है, उनको GSTR1 वो फाइल नहीं करेंगे, लेकिन मंथली दे विल फाइल अ इनवॉइस फाइलिंग फैसिलिटी विच इज कॉल्ड एज IFF. ओके. So IFF means a interim facility which is given to a quarterly filers, wherein instead of, because they are filing quarterly, but receiver को credit चाहिए, so then they will file something called as a IFF, invoice filing facility. So second condition is that it should appear in your GSTR2B. How it will appear? If the supplier uploads it in his GSTR1. So ITC of invoices, debit notes which have been furnished by the suppliers in their GSTR1 and reflected in the GSTR2B of the recipient, there you can claim the full ITC. Full ITC can be claimed on such invoices. If ITC on invoices or debit notes which are not furnished by the supplier in GSTR1, then no ITC can be claimed in respect of such invoice. Only those invoices which are uploaded by the supplier will be available to you. If he is not uploaded, second condition is not satisfied, आपको credit नहीं मिलेगा. Now, what is this GSTR 1 and 2B linkage? Say एक example लेते हैं, Mr. A sells goods to Mr. B and he is filing the GSTR 1. Now, this filing when he does, or he files IFF if he is a filer GSTR 1 quarterly. So, GSTR returns जो है quarterly भी file कर सकते हैं, monthly भी file कर सकते हैं for a small taxpayer. So, if he is a small taxpayer, वो quarterly GSTR 1 file करेगा, monthly he can file a IFF. So once he filed this GSTR1 or IFF, this detail will appear in the GSTR2B of Mr. B. जैसे आपने फॉर्म 26AS देखा होगा, जब मैं TDS रेमिट करता हूं और आपका प्लान नंबर डालता हूं, आपके 26AS में वो क्रेडिट मिलता है. सिमिलर टू दैट व्हेन द सप्लायर, वहां पे एटलीस्ट ईयरली है, ईयर इट इज मंथली बेसिस. When the supplier files the GSTR1, it will reflect in GSTR2B of Mr. B, and basis how it will appear, basis the information in GSTR1, it gets reflected in GSTR2B of Mr. B, and then the amount of ITC on purchase gets credited to his electronic credit ledger on filing 3B. So ये है linkage of GSTR 1, GSTR 2B and GSTR 3B. When is his IFF filed? On a monthly basis. Got it? 1 appears in 2B, and then basis the 2B, you will claim it in your GSTR 3B returns. ठीक है. Next, 16(2)AA says the details of the invoices or debit note which is referred to in clause A has been furnished by the supplier in the statement of outward supply, and such details has been communicated to the recipient of such invoice or debit note in the manner specified under section 37. Invoices on ITC which is not available under any provisions are not to be considered. This is fine. So what I'm saying is, when you go to block credit, the credit which is blocked, even if it is appearing in your GSTR 2B, you can still not claim it. Just because it's appearing in 2B, everything you can claim it, ऐसा नहीं है. You also have to filter it off to see whether it is block credit. If it is block credit, you cannot claim it. And full ITC of input tax credit can be claimed, or IGST paid on import, because imports and documents which is issued under reverse charge mechanism and credit received under ISD. These are the 3 exceptions for which you will not check whether it is appearing in your GSTR 2B. Okay, why? Very important. This could come as a question to you because section 37 says that only apart from these 3, everything has to be uploaded in the GSTR 1. So the ITC can be availed in respect of IGST paid on import without appearing in the GSTR 2B, and reverse charge mechanism and ISD also can appear without appearing in the GSTR 2B. When GSTR 3B is filed, only then purchaser gets the ITC, or when the supplier files GSTR 1. So when the supplier files GSTR 1, it will appear in the GSTR 2B. But just GSTR 2B is one of the conditions. For you to get it in your electronic credit ledger, you have to file your GSTR 3B. Once you file your 3B, it will appear in your electronic credit ledger. Okay. So if you understand this ITC breakdown of ₹100 for the month, check compliance of section 16(2)AA, and whatever is ineligible, you will check. Fine. जो भी 16(2)A, check the compliance. Then check whether it is complied. Yes, up to 70 rupees it is complied. Then you will take it. Not complied to the extent of 20, you will not take it. And ineligible ITC जो है, that you cannot claim it irrespective of whether 16(2)AA compliance है या नहीं. Clear? Point on import, Priyaji, import जो है, right? When you import, it will appear in the bill of entry, but वो क्रेडिट GSTR 2B में appear नहीं होगा तो भी आप क्लेम कर सकते हो. Credit note is not uploaded by the supplier. नहीं आस्था जी, credit note will also be uploaded by the supplier, and on that credit we cannot claim because credit note पे credit तो supplier ही उसके sales में कम करेगा. Correct? Only supplier reduces his credit, so he has to ensure that the recipient reverses the credit. So when he uploads in the GSTR 1 sales and the credit notes, I can claim the credit, and whatever credit note is appearing, I have to reverse the credit as well. Got it? Only imports or anything else also? Imports and reverse charge mechanism and ISD, these 3 things. Before 2B came in Divya, the system was called GSTR 2A. Now on the portal, you'll find GSTR 2A and 3B, but the law says that verify GSTR 2B itself. How to ensure if the recipient reverses the credit or not? Presently, there is no system. So the government has come up with a circular saying that you have to take a declaration from the recipient, and basis which you have to ensure that it is reversed. So 70 will be eligible, net will be 70 is what he can claim. Let's take this example to understand this, how it will happen. As per books of accounts, 8.4 is the credit which is available. In case 1, supplier has furnished form GSTR1 for 80 invoices involving ITC of rupees 6 lakhs. So how much can you claim? You can claim to the extent of 6 lakh rupees. Correct? Second scenario, 80 invoices involving ITC of 7 lakh rupees. तो second case में कितना claim कर सकते हैं? Those three items in section 16 to AA, even if not appearing, we can claim ITC for that. Which three items? जो blocked वाला है, blocked वाला you cannot claim. Second one, 7 lakhs. Correct. Case 3 is supplier have furnished form GSTR 175 invoices involving ITC of 8.5 lakhs. तो यहाँ पे कितना claim कर सकते हैं आप? Don't go with the answer. Apply your logic. 8.4 lakhs. Correct. नॉट 8.5. सौम्या आर सेइंग 8.5, लेकिन सौम्या ये भी देखना चाहिए, आपने बुक्स के क्रेडिट में 8.4 है, बट योर क्रेडिट अपियरिंग इन जीएसटीआर 1 बाय द सप्लायर्स इज 8.5. सो कैन यू क्लेम मोर? यू कैन नॉट क्लेम मोर, क्योंकि आपके बुक्स में क्रेडिट ही 8.4 है. तो जीएसटीआर 2B में जो अपियर होता है उसको आप ब्लाइंडली नहीं ले सकते हो. दैट इज द पॉइंट. द पॉइंट इज that whatever is your eligible credit, only that you have to claim. You have to claim only 8.4 and 10,000 will not be claimable. $10,000 is balance amount payable. No, it's not payable. क्योंकि आप ITC, we are talking about ITC. ITC is always claimable, not payable. So instead of claiming 8.5, you claim just 8.4. Condition number 3 is actual receipt of goods. You should have actually received the goods, where the recipient shall have received the goods by own or by his agent. That's fine. Either you receive it or you authorize the agent to receive on your behalf. That is fine. That is treated as actual receipt. If the recipient has paid advance, right? जब हम advance pay करते हैं, supplier will charge GST. उसका हम ले सकते हैं, नहीं ले सकते, because you have paid the advance but you have not received the goods, so you cannot claim the credit. And third exception is in case of bill to ship to transaction. You have billed to me but shipped to somebody else. He has received it, I have not received it, but even in that case, it will be treated as constructive receipt, because on your instruction, the supplier has supplied to the third person. Even in case of bill to ship to, even if you have not received actually, the person who is received on your behalf will be treated as actual receipt of goods. Got it? That is actual receipts of goods. So in case of bill to ship to transaction, again, same diagram to understand that when Ganesh Traders bills to Maruti Traders, even though he is not receiving it, it is getting received by Prime Hardwares. This will be treated as received by Maruti Traders itself because the goods are delivered to Prime Hardwares on behalf of Maruti Traders. It will be treated as receipt. Goods are deemed to be received by Maruti Traders. Fourth condition is details of ITC in respect of supply are not restricted under section 38. This is a new condition which says that आपके GSTR 2B में दो columns दिखेंगे अभी. So when Prime Hardware receives the goods, then only Maruti Traders deemed to receive, both are deemed to be received because उसका तो actually receive हुआ ये, from मुझे it will be deemed to be received, so both can claim the credit. So GSTR 2B, this fourth condition is it should not be restricted under section 38 on which ITC is available to the recipient. So in your 2B, you will have two columns, credit on which ITC is available and credit on which ITC cannot be available. Okay. And the fourth condition is ITC, the condition what we are talking fourth is continuing. कि section 38 में सब जो restrictions है, what are those restrictions? That if you are this is there in the section but that is not yet effective. So आपके GSTR 2B में अभी ये bifurcation नहीं दिखेंगे, but going forward it will be bifurcated. When it is a new registrant who has defaulted in payment of the tax or who has output tax payable more in one than GSTR 3B or who has availed ITC more than what is appearing in his GSTR 2B, who has defaulted in discharging the tax under section 86B or any other person as may be prescribed. So if these category people are there, right? If there are this category of people, then if you're buying anything from them, then your credit will be restricted. Why? Because a lot of fake invoices cases are going in the market and the government wants to restrict it. That is the reason they will restrict the credit. Recipient needs to reconcile 2B. Can he reverse the invoice for block credit by himself in the portal? No, he cannot do it. There is something now called as a invoice management facility, IMS, where he can stop taking it because he has an option to accept, reject it. So for your exams, it's not there. Practically now in the IMS invoice management system, there he can say that, okay, I've not received it, so he can keep it as pending. That he can do. Okay, so this is the condition number 4. Fifth condition, tax leviable on supply is actually paid to the government, which means the supplier should have actually paid the taxes to the government either by cash or by ITC, whichever way is fine. So the supplier should pay the cash or pay the ITC. And section 41 says the registered person can avail the credit of eligible ITC as self-assessed in his return and such amount shall be credited to his electronic credit ledger. मतलब जब वो file करेगा 3B, then he can utilize it as a credit. And reversal of ITC, which we were talking, if the tax payable corresponding to such ITC availed is not paid, then ITC so availed shall be reversed. So section 41 says that आप क्रेडिट लीजिए, अगर आपको पता चलता है कि सप्लायर ने पे नहीं किया है तो आपको रिवर्स करना पड़ेगा. So avail, reverse and re-avail. 41 says you reverse it if the supplier is not paid. If he pays, you can re-avail. So first avail the credit based on other conditions. Once you know he's not filed the returns, then reverse it and re-avail it when the supplier files it. Reversal of ITC in case of non-payment of taxpayer by the supplier. This is what we have said. A registered person can claim ITC based on GSTR 1 And if the supplier has not filed the 3B within when? Within 30th September. Because he has to file the 3B on a monthly basis at the time, because in your GSTR 2B, you will not know if the supplier has filed his return or no. If he is not filed, you have to reverse it. You can wait till 30th September. If he is not reversed, while filing your return for the 30th November, you have to reverse it. And once he files it, you can reclaim it. And the last condition is filing of returns. That what is, we know this, GSTR 1 appearing in 2B, file in your 3B. Once you file it, the credit is available. Okay? So these are the 6 conditions which is there under section 16(2). Which part you didn't understand, Dhanush? Reversal of ITC. Okay. So what is the reversal of ITC is basically saying that this one, when you are filing any return, right? Supplier has to file the return. He has to file the return by the 30th September. If he's filing by 30th September, good. If he's not filing by 30th September, then you have to reverse the credit. And once he files it, then you have to re-avail. So that's what I've explained, that avail the credit based on your GSTR 2B. That is the first condition. Check if the supplier has, all the suppliers have filed it by 30th September. If they have filed, no reversal. If even one supplier has not filed, to that extent of that credit for that supplier for that month, you reverse it and then re-avail it once the supplier files it. Any more doubts in these 6 pointers? Three B is to be filed by 20th. Yes, by the 20th. Okay. So these are the 6 conditions. 2B I'm asking, हाँ, ड्यू डेट फॉर 2B, ड्यू डेट ऑफ 2B नहीं है, क्योंकि 2B तो आपको ऑटोमेटिकली दिखेगा. GSTR 1 का जो ड्यू डेट है 13th, 13th is the due date for filing GSTR 1. After 13th you can see all your credits in 2B. 13th के पहले आप नहीं देख सकते हो, because the due date for GSTR 1 itself is by 13th. 14th से लेके 20th तक आप GSTR 2B देख सकते हो. जीएसटीआर क्या होता है? जीएसटीआर रिटर्न होता है जो आप फाइल करते हो, उसे कहते हैं जीएसटी रिटर्न्स. इज देयर एनी टाइम लिमिट अप टू विच जीएसटीआर 3B इज टू बी फाइल्ड? नहीं. आफ्टर दैट देयर इज नो लिमिट. सो द ड्यू डेट फॉर द सप्लायर इज दैट ही हैज टू फाइल इट. आफ्टर दैट देयर इज नो टाइम लिमिट एज सच. करेक्ट. सो सिंस जीएसटीआर 1 मैडम मंथली फाइलर्स के लिए 11 थे और क्वार्टरली फाइलर्स के लिए 13. ओके, सो इसीलिए 13 के बाद ही आप डाउनलोड कर सकते हो. Can you explain 16 to double A once again? Sure. 16(2)(a) says that, very simple, the details of the invoice or debit note, which is referred to in clause A, has been furnished by the supplier in his statement of outward supplies, and such details have been communicated to the recipient of such invoice or debit note in the manner specified in under section 37, which means key the details of the invoice should be furnished by the supplier in the manner in section 37, which is his GSTR 1. What does section 37 say is every supplier shall upload his outward supplies on a monthly basis or a quarterly basis. So the supplier uploads the details on a monthly or quarterly basis under section 37 in a statement called as GSTR 1. So invoice on which ITC is not available under any provisions are not to be considered is what I'm saying. So you should see GSTR 2B based on GSTR 1, but there also you should see whether if there's any block credit, don't claim the credit on that. आरसीएम क्या होता है? रोहित, हमने देखा था ये कि हमने चार्ज के सप्लाई में ही ये देखा है। आपको चार्ज सप्लाई का वीडियो पूरा देखना पड़ेगा, क्योंकि पूरा एक चैप्टर ही है आरसीएम का, वहां पे देखोगे तब पता चलेगा। If supplier don't fill the GSTR 3B, ITCB to be received by the recipient. If the supplier don't fill the 3B, yes. अगर वो फाइल नहीं करता है by September, then receiver has to reverse the claim. हाँ, हाउ वी कैन क्लेम क्रेडिट्स ऑफ इंपोर्ट्स? इंपोर्ट्स का क्रेडिट आपके पास बिल ऑफ एंट्री है, उसके बेसिस पे आप 3B में मैन्युअली आपका इंपोर्ट्स का जो भी आईजीएसटी आप एंटर करके क्लेम कर सकते हो। यू कैन मैन्युअली एंटर इट। ओके, इट्स नॉट लाइक कि आपको हार्ड की इन या यू हैव टू सेलेक्ट समथिंग only then it will appear. All the details in your GSTR 3B you can put your own numbers. Import is an exempt supply, then also we get full ITC. नहीं मैडम, अगर import exempted है, राइट, तो फिर जीएसटी चार्ज ही नहीं होगा। इफ द इम्पोर्ट इज टैक्सेबल तभी आपको क्रेडिट मिलेगा। अगर एग्जेम्प्टेड है तो फिर टैक्स लगाएगा ही नहीं, तो फिर क्रेडिट भी नहीं मिलेगा। ओके, नाउ अपार्ट फ्रॉम दिस देर आर अदर कंडीशंस आल्सो 16(2) के बाद, विच इज वेरी वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट टू क्लेम द क्रेडिट। Similarly, we have to put manually for credit under ISD and on issue of RCM. Correct. Very right. Very true. रीअवेलमेंट क्या होता है कि आपने रिवर्स कर दिया है, आपको बाद में रिक्लेम करना है, उसे कहते हैं रीअवेलमेंट। क्लेम, रिवर्स एंड रीअवेल। What if supplier never fill the GSTR 3B? Then what is the remedy for the recipient? Unfortunately, गवर्नमेंट इज सेइंग नो रेमेडी। आपको सप्लायर को पुश करके उसका रिटर्न फाइल करवाना पड़ेगा, देन यू कैन क्लेम द क्रेडिट। Okay. The other points related to ITC is where the goods against an invoice are received in lots or in installments. तो आप क्रेडिट क्लब क्लेम करोगे फर्स्ट लॉट रिसीव होने पे? नहीं. The registered person shall be eligible or shall be entitled to take the credit upon receipt of the last lot. Okay. So if you have a installation of a lift and this lift cannot come in one consignment, it is received in 3 lots. First lot आ गया है, second lot कल आएगा, third lot will come on the third day. Send, you cannot claim the credit on the first day itself. When the last lot comes in, that time you can claim it. Okay. So this is in line with section 16.2, which says that you have to receive all the goods, right? So all the goods receive hona chahiye, not part of the goods. Full lots has to come in, only then you can claim the credit. The other condition is one of the proviso to section 2, right? Which says that when you have satisfied all the 6 conditions, one more condition from my side. This condition is given in the proviso, which says that payment is to be made to the supplier within 180 days from the date of issue of invoice. Oops. 6 condition काफी नहीं थे. There is this additional condition. Yes, this is very critical condition. For 16.2 proviso very relevant. This काफी changes हुए लेकिन ये proviso हटा नहीं है. This proviso says that once you receive the invoice, make the payment within 180 days from the date of issue of invoice to the supplier. If you do not make it, then you are not eligible to claim the credit, reverse the credit. Okay. So you have to pay to the vendor within 180 days. Okay. If you don't pay, then you have to reverse the credit. If paid later than 180 days, then reverse the credit, that is add in your output tax liability with interest. क्योंकि आपने जब credit claim किया है उसको utilize कर दिया है. So for that extent there is a benefit which you have got, so you have to reverse it with interest of 18% from the date of availing till the date you reverse it. Okay. And on payment, reclaim the credit. Again, that same chart, avail the credit initially. Within 180 days, see if you're paying. If you're paying, fine. If you have not paid, reverse the credit with interest. And when you are availing the credit, when you're paying him back, re-avail the credit. Got it? Exception to this is RCM, because RCM में tax आप ही pay करोगे. And in case of deemed supply without consideration, that is Schedule 1 transactions. And third is additions made to supplier's liability being incurred by the recipient of the supply. So in these situations, payment of 180 days is not required. In other conditions, you have to. This itself is major. Let me know if you have understood in these 2 pointers. Explain the third exemption. Third exception is when additions are made to supplier's liability being incurred by the recipient. So आपने valuation में पढ़ा होगा ना कि that what has to be added to the value when supplier, okay, supplier supplies something and that supplier has to pay something, but that is incurred by the recipient. जैसे मैं कंस्ट्रक्शन कर रहा हूं घर का, recipient is said सीमेंट में ही परचेज करूंगा. So when the purchaser has bought the cement, correct? So to that extent, he will not pay me. So that addition I will do to the valuation. So that addition made to the supplier's liability being incurred by the recipient, because he's already incurred it, so that he will not pay to the supplier. So that is the third exception. 18% is fixed, 18% is not example. 18% is the rate which is fixed under the law. Why is supplier filing GSTR 3B significant for receipt of claiming of ITC? Because that is the mechanism, no, Ishan? Supplier files 3B, only then it is payment of tax. Because if you file GSTR 1, you're not paying any taxes. Only by filing 3B, the actual taxes is going to the government. That's why it is very significant. Correct. For these three exceptions, 180 days is not relevant. He will not pay addition in value, but he will pay GST on full value, included addition value. Then why it is an exception? Because he will not pay that much value to the supplier. Supplier will charge less value to that extent. So there is no question of the receiver paying the consideration to the supplier on that value. GST is not complicated, Omkar. You have to get into the flow. You will understand the logical thing also. Why reversing the credit if paid later than 180 days? Because 180 days is the time limit, madam. But you have to make the payment to the supplier within 180 days. If you do not make the payment, then you have to reverse it. नहीं नहीं, इंटरेस्ट पे आपको फिर से जीएसटी नहीं पे करना, लेट पे कर रहे हो उसके लिए आप इंटरेस्ट दे रहे हो, इंटरेस्ट के ऊपर फिर से जीएसटी नहीं लगेगा. Correct. For these three, Priyanshi, for these three exceptions, only the prior 6 conditions will apply. Correct. Good that you are asking very good questions. GST on additional value, recipient will pay directly to the government. Directly to the government, nahi madam, directly to the vendor. He will pay directly to the vendor. Na, ये reverse charge तो नहीं है. He is paying directly to the other vendor. जैसे मेरे को आपको कुछ सप्लाई करना है, आप बोल रहे हो कि आप ये 10,000 तक का वैल्यू है ना, आप परचेज मत कीजिए, मैं परचेज कर लूंगी. सो व्हेन यू परचेज, यू आर मेकिंग पेमेंट डायरेक्टली टू द वेंडर ऑन माई बिहाफ, जो मुझे परचेज करना था. करेक्ट. तो दैट 10,000 रुपीज यू आर पेइंग टू दैट वेंडर इज चार्जिंग यू जीएसटी. So that 10,000 you will not pay me, but I will charge you on 90 plus 10,000 rupees. So on this 10,000 tak, if you don't pay me, you can still claim the credit. Or if, yeah, तो within 180 days अगर आप ये 10,000 पे नहीं करेंगे तो भी आप claim कर सकते हो. Sir, it is payment plus 18% or reverse credit plus 18%? Reverse credit plus 18%. I couldn't understand that is supplier. If supplier will reverse the credit, supplier will not reverse the credit, madam. Credit will reverse by the recipient, because credit कौन ले रहा है? Recipient ले रहा है. So recipient will reverse the credit, not the supplier. Supplier तो supply कर दे, GST गवर्नमेंट को पे कर चुका है. रिसीवर ने जो क्रेडिट लिया है, उसने अगर सप्लायर को 180 डेज में पेमेंट नहीं किया है, so then he has to reverse the credit. Correct. Reversal will be when filing the return in 3B itself. Yes, it will be through the 3B only, no other mode. Clear? Exceptions will be eligible for 6 conditions. Correct. How will recipient get the ITC जब supplier को payment नहीं मिला? Supplier को payment नहीं हुआ तो क्या हुआ? दूसरे conditions है ना, supplier को immediately payment नहीं होता है. Once you buy any goods, it is on credit also. Correct? मैंने आपको आज सप्लाई कर दिया, आप पेमेंट 3 महीने के बाद करोगे, आपको क्रेडिट तो आज ही मिल जाएगा, बिकॉज आई सप्लाइड द गुड्स एंड गिवन यू द इनवॉइस. While reclaiming the credit, even interest can be claimed? No. While reversing, You have to reverse with interest. You cannot reclaim it back. Okay. Swati madam.
Yes, sir.
You
Sir,
can.
Shafali this side.
Yes, Shefali madam.
Good afternoon to all the students and good afternoon, sir. So I would be sharing my presentation. Sir, can I share my presentation now?
Yes, madam.
Just a minute. So is my presentation visible to you all?
Yes, madam.
Good afternoon, Priyanshi. Okay, thank you, sir. So actually, in the time of supply class, we had left one circular and for which I was getting time and again reminders. Thank you, Vishal, for confirming. I was getting reminders from the students to cover that circular. NHAI circular was there that if NHAI has a agreement of construction of road with a concessionaire and it is a hybrid model. So where the public-private partnership is there, the government has given some contract, NHAI has given some contract to a private concessionaire to construct a road and also to operate and maintain it. So in that case, how the time of supply would be, derived, or how this time of supply will be determined. So for that, we first of all have to see that what is the definition of, because this is a continuous supply of services. But before that, let's not quickly come at the conclusion that yes, this is a time of continuous supply of services. Let us see, first of all, what is model, where DBOT means design, build, operate, and transfer. So once the road has been constructed, it constructs the road and then it transfers it to NHAI. But after that, its responsibility does not get over. After that, it also owns the responsibility of operating and maintaining that particular road for NHAI. This is how their contract is entered into. So this type of contract is called hybrid annuity mode. So one private constructor or contractor would be there, that is called concessionaire. He would be providing these services to NHAI, and this contract will be spread over a period of 15 to 17 years because it will take a lot of time for construction. And after that, for a considerable period, significant period, the concessionaire would be maintaining that road also, operating that road also. Therefore, the period for which these services will be provided will be more than 3 months. They will be provided on a recurring basis because construction services, as we had already seen in the time of supply class, that they are the services, they are the continuous supply of services. Generally, construction services are continuous supply of services based on their terms of agreement. But generally, they are on a recurring basis, period is more than 3 months, and other conditions of continuous supply of services are satisfied, and payment of the consideration in this particular agreement is usually spread over all the years. Whatever is the period of contract, 15 years, 20 years, 17 years, whatever is the period of contract, payment will be spread over this period. So you will not get the entire payment in one go. Now, let us first of all see the definition of the continuous supply of services, whether this particular transaction qualifies as continuous supply of services. Supply of services provided or agreed to be provided continuously or on recurring basis under a contract for a period exceeding 3 months with periodic payment obligations. And rest is the last one is it's an inclusive clause which includes some other notified services also. So if we see first 4 bullet points, can we conclude that the services provided by a concessionaire under an HAM contract to NHAI qualifies as continuous supply of services? Quickly give me the answer in the chat box that whether based on our discussion, which we had earlier also in the time of supply class. Okay, Ishan has given me an answer. What about others? Definition is there in on your screen, and I will also move to the HAM contract. That services are provided for a continuous period of 15 to 17 years. It is providing DBOT and OM services. Payment is spread over the years. Okay, so I have started getting answers from all of you. Ishan, you are right. Miss P, you are also right. Astha, Rajveer, all of you are right. That this is a continuous supply of services. So, Soumya, yes. So you got this point that this is a continuous supply of services. Why? Because the services are being provided on a recurring or on a continuous basis. Let us, first of all, let all of you see this slide, that what are the terms or conditions of an HAM contract, that is hybrid annuity model, that it is providing the build, operate, and maintenance services. Plus, this period is almost of 15 to 17 years. So a very long period is there. It can go up to 20 years also. Payment for the same is spread over the years of the contract. So we'll once again see the definition of continuous supply of services, because this class is for input tax credit. So some of you would not have been, who have not done the time of supply class, they might feel a bit out of touch that what this continuous supply of services is. Those who are with us throughout these classes, so they would be remembering this definition, and I hope all of you remember, who were there in the time of supply class, they would be remembering this definition. So continuous supply of services was that it should be provided on a continuously or on a recurring basis. Period should be more than 3 months. Here the period is almost 15, 20 years, and periodic payments are there. So here periodic payment obligations are there. So because of this, we can conclude that yes, it is a continuous supply of services. And all of you have concluded correctly that yes, these are the continuous supply of services. Okay. So I hope this is clear to you all, because this circular everybody found very difficult, and that is why I was getting this request time and again that this circular we need to cover. Due to paucity of time, we could not cover it in the time of supply classes. Last class also was what value of supply, and we had that GST Titan quiz. So after that, we could not stretch the class after 5:30. So I thought that today those students who were there in time of supply, they can also understand, and who have newly joined for ITC class, at least by understanding the concept, you will be able to appreciate the provision. So continuous supply of services, all of you got that this was the definition, and as per the definition, at least we can conclude this much, that hybrid annuity model is a continuous supply of service. Now, the HAM model. So once again, we'll see what is there in HAM contract. The payment is made spread over the contract period in installments, and payment for each installment is to be made. Now, there are different installments in which the payment would be made, and each installment is payable either after a specified period or on completion of an event as specified in the contract. Now, these two bullets are very, very important for determining the time of supply. All those who were there in the time of supply class, they would be knowing that yes, for the determination of supply of services, the provision was same as in case of any other service. The provision was that if the invoice was issued within the specified time limit, which was there under section 31, then the time of supply will be date of issuance of invoice or date of receipt of payment, whichever is earlier. And if invoice is not issued within the time specified under section 31, then the time of supply will be date of provision of service or date of receipt of payment, whichever is earlier. This was the very simple concept for determination of time of supply of services. Whether it is a continuous supply of service or it is a normal service, the provision was to remain same. But when the invoice is required to be issued under section 31, in case of continuous supply of services, that provision was different for continuous supply and it was different for normal services. So we'll once again revise that particular point. Pavan is saying Hindi में समझा दीजिए. Hindi में भी समझाती हूँ Pavan. Once let me complete this concept, I will quickly revise it in Hindi also. Hindi में भी आपको एक बार पूरा concept समझा दूंगी. So या चलिए जहां तक अभी तक करा है एक बार वो हिंदी में समझ लेते हैं. HAM कॉन्ट्रैक्ट का मतलब ये है कि एक पब्लिक प्राइवेट पार्टनरशिप है NHAI की और उसके कंसेशनर जो कि उसके लिए वो रोड कंस्ट्रक्ट कर रहे हैं, रोड कंस्ट्रक्ट करने के लिए एक HAM कॉन्ट्रैक्ट एंटर किया जाता है जिसमें पब्लिक प्राइवेट पार्टनरशिप होती है। बहुत लंबे पीरियड के लिए ये कॉन्ट्रैक्ट होता है, पेमेंट्स आपकी स्प्रेड होती हैं पूरे कॉन्ट्रैक्ट पे और आपको रिकरिंग नेचर की सर्विसेज प्रोवाइड करनी होती है। तो आपको पेमेंट भी आपको इंस्टॉलमेंट्स में मिलती है यानी, और उसके लिए पेमेंट या तो एक फिक्स डेट्स होती है कि इस पीरियड के बाद पेमेंट आपको ड्यू हो जाएगी या फिर आपकी एक इवेंट कंप्लीट होने के बाद पेमेंट ड्यू हो जाती है। तो हमें ये देखना है कि इसका टाइम ऑफ सप्लाई हम कैसे निकाल सकते हैं। तो ये कॉन्टिन्यूस सप्लाई ऑफ सर्विस है, ये हम सब ने डिटरमिन कर लिया। अब कॉन्टिन्यूस सप्लाई ऑफ सर्विस में पहले हम नॉर्मल प्रोविजन पे जाएंगे जहां पे हम ये देखते थे कि किस तरह से हम उसका इनवॉइस इशू करते थे, कब हमें उसमें इनवॉइस इशू करनी है। तो हम पहले नॉर्मल प्रोविजन पे जाते हैं। नॉर्मल प्रोविजन में हमारे पास वी हैड 3 cases. First, where the invoice was to be issued, where due date of payment is ascertainable. Like in our case, we had given in case of the HAM contract, we know there are 2 cases. या तो आपकी पेमेंट एक स्पेसिफाइड डेट के बाद होती है या फिर आपकी पेमेंट एक इवेंट के कंप्लीट होने पे होती है। तो वहां where the due date of payment is ascertainable, then the invoice has to be issued on or before the due date of payment. Second point was where due date of payment is not known, which is not in our case. HAM contract में due date of payment आपको पता है, तो इसलिए वो केस तो है ही नहीं, तो this will not apply. The third case which will apply is on or completion of the milestone. कोई एक इवेंट कंप्लीट होने के बाद अगर आपकी पेमेंट जो है वो किसी इवेंट से लिंक्ड है, then after completion or before the completion of that event. So in case the payment is linked, the payment has a specified date. Let me come to the hybrid model. It says that payment is either made on a specified due date or on completion of an event. That means जो इनवॉइस का प्रोविजन था सेक्शन 31 में, उसके 2 क्लॉजेज अट्रैक्ट हो रहे हैं। पहला, वेयर ड्यू डेट ऑफ पेमेंट इज असर्टेनेबल। ओके, जहां पे ड्यू डेट ऑफ पेमेंट असर्टेनेबल है वहां पे, यानी कि यहाँ पे ड्यू डेट आपको पता है बिकॉज पेमेंट इज made after a specified period. Payment has to be made after a specified period. That means due date is fixed. That is the first case. Second, or payment has to be made on completion of an event. So where the payment is linked to the completion of an event. In that case, invoice has to be issued on or before the completion of that particular event. So we are left with 2 events now. One, where payment on or before the due date of payment or on or before the completion of the milestone, invoice has to be issued. अब ये 2 इवेंट्स हैं। अगर आपने इन इवेंट्स पे इनवॉइस इशू कर दी तो हम क्या बोलेंगे, आपने इनवॉइस टाइमली इशू करी है। और क्योंकि आपने इनवॉइस टाइमली इशू करी है तो वो इनवॉइस आपके काम की है, दैट इनवॉइस इज यूजफुल फॉर यू, सो यू विल बी यूजिंग इट फॉर डिटरमिनिंग टाइम ऑफ सप्लाई। अगर आपने इनवॉइस इन 2 इवेंट से पहले इशू कर दी है, ड्यू डेट ऑफ पेमेंट और the completion of the milestone, if you have issued invoice before either of these 2 events, then what would be the time of supply as per the time of supply provisions which we had discussed earlier? Quickly tell me in the chat box, उस केस में क्या होगा टाइम ऑफ सप्लाई अगर आपकी इनवॉइस टाइमली इशू हुई है। टाइमली क्या है, या तो आपकी कंप्लीशन ऑफ माइलस्टोन से पहले आपने इनवॉइस इशू कर दी है या फिर आपने ड्यू डेट ऑफ पेमेंट से पहले इनवॉइस इशू कर दी है। In that case, what would be your time of supply? Good, Ishan. Your answer is correct. Yes, earlier I have already assumed that you wish to say that only. Rajveer, you are right. No, Rajveer, a little bit, some differences there. We are talking about services, Rajveer. So I want a modified answer from you. Time of supply of services. We have just discussed that in case the invoice is issued on time, invoice is issued on the within the time limit specified. Nidhi, earlier of which 2 dates, Nidhi, you are talking about? Astha, you are right. Then Soumya is also right. What about others? So what case we are discussing where the invoice is issued within the specified time, then in case of continuous supply of services, how will we determine time of supply? We are understanding a circular, but circular is in conformity with the provisions which we have already discussed. Okay, Nidhi, you are right. Invoice. Okay. Okay. So any more answers? Otherwise, let us see the provision. So here we had already seen, let us once again see it from the beginning so that some of you might be in confusion till now, they will also understand, because I was expecting more answers from all of you. See, in case of an HEM contract says that concessionaire will build, will design, build, operate, transfer, operate and maintain the road for the National Highway Authority of India, NHAI. Now, under this contract, the payment will be spread over a longer period of around 15 to 20 years, and the payment will be made in installments. Now, when this installment will be due, this installment will be due either after a specified period or after completion of a milestone event, as mentioned in the contract, whatever is mentioned in the contract. So if it is mentioned that it will be due after a specified period, then the payment will be made after that specified period. Or if it is mentioned on completion of an event, then payment will be made on completion of an event. Now, as per the invoicing provisions contained under section 31, the invoice has to be raised in case we have specified a fixed date that the payment will be made after a specified period. Then those fixed dates on which payment has to be made, before that date, on or before that date, invoice should be issued. If our contract provides that payment has to be made on completion of an event, then invoice has to be issued on or before completion of that event. This is the simple provision which we had done in the time of supply chapter, invoicing provision. Okay, let us see that provision once again. When invoice is to be issued, so where the due date of payment is ascertainable from the contract. अगर हमारा कॉन्ट्रैक्ट बताता है कि इस डेट पर आपको ये साल में 4 डेट्स है जिस पे पेमेंट करनी है, तो उन डेट्स तक आपको इनवॉइस इशू कर देनी है. लेकिन अगर आपका कॉन्ट्रैक्ट बोलता है कि आपको किसी डेट के किसी इवेंट के कंप्लीट होने से रिलेट कर देता है, 25% ऑफ द वर्क व्हेन इट इज कंप्लीटेड, देन यू हैव टू मेक द पेमेंट. अगर पेमेंट किसी इवेंट से लिंक है, तो उस इवेंट के कंप्लीट होने से पहले या उस इवेंट के कंप्लीट होने तक आपको इनवॉइस इशू करनी है. So either of these two events as specified in the contract. This depends on your contract. You have to issue the invoice. Now my question was that in case you have issued the invoice on time, then what would be your time of supply? Okay. Ascertainable मतलब जब आपका निधि ascertainable का मतलब जब कॉन्ट्रैक्ट से ये पता चल जाता है कि आपकी क्या ड्यू डेट है. अगर आपकी ड्यू डेट रैंडम है, आप कभी भी पेमेंट कर सकते हो, तो दैट इज नॉट असर्टेनेबल. आप असर्टेन नहीं कर सकते हो, आप पहले से डिटरमिन नहीं कर सकते हो कि आपका कौन सी डेट्स पे पेमेंट होगी. बट अगर आपकी ड्यू डेट्स ऑफ पेमेंट फिक्स्ड है, आपको पता है कि मुझे इन डेट्स पर ही पेमेंट करनी है, दैट इज द ड्यू डेट्स आर असर्टेनेबल फ्रॉम द कॉन्ट्रैक्ट. उस केस में हम बोलेंगे कि ड्यू डेट्स ऑफ पेमेंट हमें पता है, दैट इज प्री डिटरमिन्ड, यू कैन से कि वी नो इट बिफोर हैंड. ओके, सो मिस पी इज सेइंग, Rajveer, now your receipt of payment, Rajveer, then it will be correct. Okay, so either of these two dates you can issue the invoice depending on the contract. Contract में क्या लिखा है? Fixed date of payment है, तो this will apply, and if completion of event से आपकी payment linked है, then this provision will apply for invoicing. Now let us see what will be our time of supply if invoice is issued on or before the specified date or date of completion of event specified in the contract as applicable. HAM मतलब होता है हाइब्रिड एन्युटी मॉडल, जहां पे आपके प्राइवेट और पब्लिक कंपनीज दोनों इकट्ठे, दे वर्क टुगेदर टू enter into a contract. They jointly enter into a contract. Hybrid annuity model. Just a minute. Soumya is saying something. Before that, Nidhi was saying. HAM जो है hybrid annuity model, generally it is seen for the construction, and this particular circular is for the construction of road. Do we need to check two dates to? Yes, we need to check that. You need to check either of the two dates depending on the contract. अगर contract आपका कहता है कि specified dates पर आपकी payment due होगी, then you have to take the payment. You have to see the due date of payment. If contract says आपकी payment milestone से related है, आपने 10% of the contract अगर complete कर लिया, construction complete कर लिया, then you have to make this much amount of payment. After 25% payment will become due, then after 50% payment will become due. So those events will become your milestone, and before completion of those events or till the date of completion of those events, you have to issue the invoice. So you have to check either of these two events, what your contract says. But if your invoice is issued within that time limit, which your section 31 provides or which we had just discussed, in that case, the time of supply will be issuance of invoice or receipt of payment, whichever is earlier. Okay, that will be your time of supply. अगर आपने अपनी इनवॉइस जो है वो ड्यू डेट ऑफ पेमेंट से पहले, या फिर अगर आपका कॉन्ट्रैक्ट कहता है कि नहीं आपको कंप्लीशन ऑफ इवेंट पे पेमेंट करनी है, तो आपने उस कंप्लीशन ऑफ इवेंट से पहले या उस डेट तक आपने अपनी इनवॉइस इशू कर दी है, then this provision will apply. This is simple time of supply provision, issuance of invoice or receipt of payment, whichever is earlier. इसमें कुछ अलग नहीं है. I want to tell you about this circular is that this circular does not tell you anything new. Only thing is the business model which is being discussed is in this circular is a bit different, जो कि HAM model है for construction of roads, जहां पर कि आपके एक कॉन्ट्रैक्ट बहुत लंबे पीरियड तक कंटिन्यू रहता है, that is for 15 to 20 years, 17 years around. This contract will continue. But other features of continuous supply of services, all the conditions of continuous supply of services are being satisfied. So this falls under continuous supply of services, and time of supply will be determined as per the normal time of supply provisions which apply on continuous supply. In fact, for continuous supply, we do not have any specific provisions. The normal provisions say issuance of invoice or receipt of payment in case invoice is issued on time. If invoice is not issued on time, then it will be provision of service, because issuance of us time par hame pata invoice is not useful for us, we'll not take invoice. In that case, we'll take the provision of service. Okay, Priyanshi is telling something. I will share with you all. So in that case, it will be provision of service or receipt of payment, whichever is earlier. That will become your time of supply. अगर आपको टाइम ऑफ सप्लाई ऑफ सर्विसेज याद हो तो उसमें यही सिंपल प्रोविजन आपने सर्विसेज के लिए किया था. इनवॉइस और in date of invoice or receipt of payment, whichever is earlier, in case invoice is issued on time. But in case invoice is not issued on time, then provision of service or receipt of payment, whichever is earlier. That will become your time of supply. So I hope this is all about the circular which we were supposed to discuss and which we had not done in the time of supply class. Today we had discussed it. Priyanshi is saying value of supply was challenging for me because you had been you were discussing that those provisions. Time of supply was super easy. So you found time of supply interesting. Generally, it so happens because value of supply is revolving around a particular section. So students generally find time of supply to be more interesting because you are always hopping from one provision to another and you are learning so many new things. So that becomes sometimes interesting and easy for students also. So Priyanshi, I hope with that you understood this NHAI circular also, others also. If anybody has any doubt, please let me know in the chat box. Astha, time of supply PPTs we have already uploaded, I suppose. Day before yesterday. Time of supply you can check, Astha, and if it is not there, you can let us know in the next class also. In the chat box you can mention, or you can put it in the group also, WhatsApp group, if you do not find those PPTs. Value of supply will get them uploaded, don't worry. Nidhi, what was your question? Nidhi, I suppose I have answered your doubt. HAM generally construction से related जो contracts होते हैं उसमें ये वाला model चलता है. Any other doubt if you have, you can again put it in the chat box. Okay, time and value दोनों की supply. सौम्या, time of supply की first session की PPT तो definitely uploaded थी. I got it confirmed in the class also. But we had 3 classes for time of supply. So for the second and third class, maybe uploaded वैसे हैं, आप एक बार फिर से चेक कीजिएगा. In case it is still not there, then please let me know. We'll get it uploaded. But we had, from our side, we have done it. Maybe it's not yet visible. You have to once check it. But I think we have done it. Our technical team has already done it. ओके निधि, आप पूछ रहे थे इशुएंस का मीनिंग है. इशुएंस ऑफ इनवॉइस का मतलब जिस दिन आपने इशू करी है इनवॉइस, जिस दिन आपने इनवॉइस बनाई है, मतलब इनवॉइस की जो डेट होती है, डेट ऑफ इनवॉइस इज डेट ऑफ इशुएंस ऑफ इनवॉइस, बेसिकली जो इनवॉइस में आपकी डेट दिखाई देती है. So I hope, Nidhi, your doubt is clarified now. Any other doubt in this particular circular? Let me know in the chat box whether you have understood the circular, whether you have understood the concept or not. जो आपका continuous supply of services का concept था, वही concept इसमें लगेगा. सिर्फ आपको ये समझना है कि कंसेशनर और एनएचईआई के बीच का जो कॉन्ट्रैक्ट है, दैट इज अ कॉन्टिन्यूस सप्लाई ऑफ सर्विसेज. इसमें कॉन्टिन्यूस सप्लाई ऑफ सर्विसेज के प्रोविजंस लगेंगे. कॉन्टिन्यूस सप्लाई ऑफ सर्विसेज के प्रोविजंस क्या कहते हैं कि अगर आपकी इनवॉइस टाइम से इशू हुई है तो आपको डेट ऑफ इशू ऑफ इनवॉइस और डेट ऑफ पेमेंट विच एवर इज अर्लियर, दैट विल बी योर टाइम ऑफ सप्लाई. इफ इनवॉइस इज नॉट इशूड ऑन टाइम, देन डेट ऑफ प्रोविजन ऑफ सर्विस और डेट ऑफ रिसीट ऑफ पेमेंट विच एवर इज अर्लियर. अब डेट ऑफ इनवॉइस की बात आती है कि इनवॉइस टाइम से इशू हुई है या नहीं हुई है. उसके लिए हम क्या चेक करेंगे? उसके लिए हम सेक्शन 31 के प्रोविजंस देखते हैं. यहाँ पे दो तरह के कॉन्ट्रैक्ट हैं. अगर कॉन्ट्रैक्ट कहता है कि आपको स्पेसिफाइड ड्यू डेट्स कॉन्ट्रैक्ट में दी हुई है, देन यू हैव टू इशू इनवॉइस बिफोर और ऑन द डेट ऑफ ड्यू डेट ऑफ पेमेंट. अगर ड्यू डेट ऑफ पेमेंट कॉन्ट्रैक्ट के हिसाब से नहीं है एंड यू हैव माइलस्टोन्स ऑन विच यू हैव टू मेक द पेमेंट, आपको ड्यू डेट पे पेमेंट नहीं करनी, आपको माइलस्टोन अचीव करने के बाद पेमेंट करनी है, then that will become your last date on which invoice should be issued. Okay, Soumya is saying she just checked on USR. Soumya, don't worry, those PPTs will be shortly uploaded. अगर अभी upload नहीं हुए हैं, they will be uploaded. Don't worry, we'll make sure कि हम आज अभी कर देंगे उनको. माइलस्टोन का मतलब क्या होता है? निधि इज आस्किंग. माइलस्टोन का मतलब, निधि एक एग्जांपल मैंने आपको दिया था. फॉर एग्जांपल, आपकी एक बिल्डिंग बन रही है, दैट इज अ कंस्ट्रक्शन कॉन्ट्रैक्ट, दैट इज अ कॉन्टिन्यूस सप्लाई ऑफ सर्विस. उसमें आपने कॉन्ट्रैक्ट में ही लिखा हुआ है कि जब आपका ग्राउंड फ्लोर रेडी हो जाएगा तब आप जो है 20% ऑफ पेमेंट, मे बी 2 लाख, टोटल कंसिडरेशन 5 लाख है. अगर आपका ग्राउंड फ्लोर कंस्ट्रक्ट हो जाएगा, 1 लाख पेमेंट ड्यू हो जाएगी. यू हैव टू मेक द पेमेंट ऑन कंप्लीशन ऑफ ग्राउंड फ्लोर. तो ग्राउंड फ्लोर, फिर फर्स्ट फ्लोर के लिए अलग आपने कंस्ट्रक्शन 1 लाख की कंसिडरेशन फिर से ड्यू हो जाएगी, सेकंड फ्लोर, थर्ड फ्लोर एंड फोर्थ फ्लोर. So this way you have split your consideration into 5 parts on construction, on completion of an event. अब यहाँ पे event क्या है, milestone क्या है? Construction of each floor. आपका ground floor complete हुआ, आपको 20% payment देनी है. For road, construction of road, what can be the milestone? कि आपने रोड के किलोमीटर्स डिवाइड कर लिए कि this much patch of the road or this much kilometers of road when it is constructed, then that will become a milestone. Yes, Nidhi. Construction of each floor will become a milestone in case of construction of a building. अगर आप रोड कंस्ट्रक्ट कर रहे हैं तो किलोमीटर्स के हिसाब से आपकी पेमेंट ड्यू हो सकती है कि ठीक है, फॉर एवरी 100 किलोमीटर्स, फॉर एवरी 10 किलोमीटर्स विल बी रिसीविंग द पेमेंट. वंस वी कंप्लीट द कंस्ट्रक्शन ऑफ 10 किलोमीटर्स, पेमेंट विल बी रिसीव्ड. सो वो जो अचीवमेंट ऑफ माइलस्टोन है, मतलब उसको आप माइलस्टोन बेसिकली बोलोगे, जिसके बाद आप कह सकते हो कि हाँ, ये कंप्लीट होने के बाद पेमेंट ड्यू हो जाएगी. दैट पर्टिकुलर event is actually a milestone which you have achieved, and then you will be receiving the payment from the recipient. Okay, so that makes it clear. So I hope this circular is clear to you all and you all are enjoying your class for ITC also. Okay, Asta is saying, I have doubt if supplier is making specified actionable claims to recipient. Those who have understood the circular, please give me in the chat box so that I can understand that yes, this circular is clear to you and we can end the class here. Okay. Thank you, Soumya. Thank you, Priyanshi. So you all have understood this circular. Okay. Asta, I will look into your doubt and I will get it clarified. Don't worry. Ishan. Okay. So if I see, I can see Priyanshi, Rajveer, Miss P, then Soumya, Priyanshi, again Ishan, Almas, Pavan. Everybody has understood the circular. Okay. So, okay, fine. So all of you are clear with this particular circular. This was the only thing which was left in time of supply. Regarding the PPTs, we will be uploading them. And regarding Astha, your query, I feel the platform has to pay the GST. But let me confirm, and that I will be clarifying maybe in the next class or maybe in the WhatsApp group. I will be clarifying. Okay. So with this, we come to an end of this session. Thank you so much. Thank you. Yes.